What is not a bullet you dodged, but a huge tactical nuke you dodged?
I had some chest pains one night and woke up my wife to tell her. She got a little scared that it might be a heart attack and we agreed that I should go to the ER. The nurses were pretty sure it was a false alarm but would run an EKG as is common practice. In my head I was hoping that the chest pain would come back, not to prove a heart attack, but so that we can find out what the chest pain was. The EKG was done by one veteran nurse and a new nurse. I was watching over their shoulders. Something was flashing on the screen that made both nurses look at each other with disbelief. They ran it again and one nurse went out to the station for help. The other stayed with me and very nicely told my wife and daughter to go back out to the waiting room. A few seconds later 5 to 6 more people came into the room slowly and calmly and began prepping me for something. It turns out that I was having my second heart attack that night in the ER. The doctors and nurses found an obstruction in my heart and were prepping me to have it cleared and a stent placed. When I got out of surgery, the doctor who placed the stent told me, "You probably picked the best time and place to have a heart attack, right here in the ER." My father-in-law was working on construction of a power plant and was scheduled work Sunday, was a union pipe fitter. Saturday he got a call from another company asking him to run a job much closer to his house, think 5-minute commute vs 50, so he accepted and didn't go to the power plant job Sunday. That day there was an explosion at the plant and people in the crew he was working with wound up getting killed.
Back in 2004, when I was only 20 I was on a road trip with my friend and her dog, from California to Washington. I was on I-5 North at around 1 a.m., using my cruise control to keep my speed at 75 miles per hour, speed limit is 70 miles per hour. I'd gotten speeding tickets in that part of Northern California before. I was familiar with this drive because my BF was in LA and I lived in Seattle, so I made that trip a few times a year for a few years. All that is to say, I had learned my lesson and used cruise control to keep myself from speeding. Never going more than 5 over the posted speed limit. So it's pitch black, early morning. My friend has her seat reclined all the way, taking a nap on the passenger side, her dog on her chest. I see what I assume to be lights from a cruiser come up behind me. The car slowly pulls alongside me, and matches my speed exactly. I kept my eyes straight ahead but I knew this person was staring at me. I wasn't panicking though, not like I had in the past when I'd encountered a cop on I-5, because I knew I wasn't really speeding. I kept glancing at the speedometer to assure myself I was good. I may have even slowed down a notch or two, to be certain. After what felt like an eternity of this cruiser just keeping pace with me, he finally slows down, swerves in behind me, and puts his lights on. As I'm slowing down and pulling off to the shoulder, I nudge my friend awake and tell her I'm getting pulled over. She asks if I was speeding, she knew my history, and I assured her I was not, and had been using cruise control. I was really starting to shake by this point. Cops make most people nervous, but something just didn't feel right about this stop. I knew there was no reason to pull me over. Pitch black, middle of nowhere, hadn't seen a gas station or rest area for miles. The guy strolls up to the passenger side of my car as my friend is using the lever to get her seat upright again. When he finally gets to the passenger side window, he looks visibly surprised that I have a passenger. He begins to fumble over his words, claims that I was going 90 miles per hour. He was so damn flustered he forgot to ask for my license. I actually asked him if he needed it. He trots back to his car and my friend and I look at each other like, WTF? Her dog, by the way, was going absolutely a pepoo during this entire interaction. I never saw that dog act like that before or after this happened. Now remember, I'd gotten a few tickets on that same stretch of road, within that same year or two. I was very familiar with this process and knew how long it should take and what to expect. In my previous experience, most cops go back to their cruisers for a good 6 to 8 minutes. This guy came back after about 2 minutes. Kinda tossed my license and registration into my friend's lap, like he was annoyed, and yelled at me to slow down and told me he'd just give me a verbal warning for now. I thanked him, despite how creepy it was, and while I was putting my license back in my wallet and registration back in my glove compartment, he fired up his cruiser and floored it back onto the highway. This is also not normal. Anytime I'd been pulled over, they would always tell me to pull out ahead of them, so they could make sure I merged carefully back onto the freeway. My friend and I were freaked. She was more freaked than me. I think I was trying to explain it away, give him the benefit of the doubt, at first. But the longer I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. I couldn't shake that nasty feeling that something wasn't quite right. Fast forward many years later, I remember hearing about some cop that had been arrested. He'd been trolling I-5 North in Northern California, During that same time period I'd been on road trips, stopping unsuspecting young single female motorists, and sexually assaulting them in his cruiser. His MO was to pull up alongside their cars, scan them to make sure they were single females, and pull them over in desolate areas at early morning hours. He ended up murdering one of these girls when she put up too much of a fight. I can't remember his name and I don't know what he looked like, it was too dark to see his face well. But my blood turned cold when I'd heard that. Definitely dodged a huge nuclear life-changing, possibly life-ending, event thanks to my tired friend and her protective little dog.
Damn, I was almost sure he was gonna be a cop impersonator. The fact that it was a real cop is even more scary.
I used to own a gym with a partner. I sold my half of the company and took a boring but stable government job about 3 months before the pandemic.
Damn, any hard feelings from your ex-business partner?
No, he wanted to buy me out for a while and I gave him a good deal. I'm sure he's kicking himself now, but he was pushing for it for at least a year. I just wasn't ready at the time.
The second floor of the house I was renting collapsed a month after I moved out. ETA, apparently a water pipe sprung a leak shortly after we left. We weren't in any trouble.
Probably all that damn stomping around. Signed, downstairs neighbor. There was an apartment I really wanted, but at the last minute I found a slightly better one. The apartment I almost moved into burned to the ground a month later.
This has the makings of a good Twilight Zone episode. Miss a flight and the plane could crash too.
I interviewed at a company in NH that made jams, baking mixes, lollipops, etc. for a technical job. The president, the owner's daughter, spent most of the interview dumping on their current consultant and making fun of all things, his degrees. That initially turned me off. Then, speaking with the owner, he makes it a point to take a call and tell the person on the other end, "I'll pay you when I pay you." Cash flow issues? His question about my education was, "What can your fancy degrees do for me?" Then, when I met the VP of marketing, she asks me how many recalls I've done. None, that's not what I do. Wait, what interview is this? I declined their offer. Fast forward maybe 5 years. I'm talking to a guy about doing some consulting work for him and we get in the subject of this company. He had interviewed there as well. He also got the vibe and declined. Turns out, they were planning on selling the company and were beefing it up for appearances. It also turns out, after the sale, that they had spent the previous months sending current clients to their next endeavor. They almost went to jail for their financial and business shenanigans. Would not have been happy to get caught in that mess.
I quit a job after my boss yelled at everybody for faking being sick when one guy came in with the flu and passed it around the office. He claimed that people don't get sick by being near each other. One guy got it so bad he was hospitalized for 2 weeks. I quit with no backup in October 2019. By February 2020, his company went out of business.
I was moving abroad to do a post-grad degree. My flight was to leave out of Newark early morning on 9/11. A family friend who worked in the towers kept prodding me to move my flight to the afternoon and come visit him in the office so he could show me around. My parents were pressuring me to go as well since it was a good networking opportunity. I was on the fence, but decided not to since I was a poor student and didn't want to pay the cab fare from my hotel in NJ to Lower Manhattan. Our friend made it out, thankfully, and I'm guessing I would have well, but no way would I want that experience burned in my memory.
Holy poo. What did your friend and family say to you after the attacks?
It was a strange experience since I landed at Charles de Gaulle a day or two after since I was moving there for 2 years and didn't really know anyone. The footage was literally the first thing I saw replayed on TV after exiting the plane. This was back when long distance was expensive, and again, I was a poor grad student, so I only had spoken with my family briefly from the airport. They knew I was okay, had chosen not to meet our friend at the towers before I flew because I'd spoke to my mother shortly before takeoff. I remember a few emotional phone calls in the weeks after I made from the telephone booth outside of my apartment in the second. It was generally a lonely experience living away from the US in the weeks and months after, but there was a huge outpouring of warmth from French people at the time. I can never express enough gratitude towards the French for that. As soon as someone found out I was American, people went out of their way to be helpful and express sympathy. A few years ago I was in a small fender bender. Someone merged into my lane, with me in it, and smashed my driver's side door and their passenger door together. I had pulled my arm in from having it hanging out the window about 15 seconds before that happened. Would have most likely had my arm ripped off.
We went to Thailand in 2003 for Christmas. I spent a number of years there in the early 90s as a kid, and loved it so much that we were gonna do it again the next year. Spend Christmas watching the sun come up on a beach at Phuket again. We had the tickets and everything, but because of some new fallout from an Enron-adjacent scandal, my dad wasn't allowed to leave the country. He wasn't implicated, but was in the C-suite of a credit card company, and all such people were under travel advisory. Anyway, the very hotel we were gonna stay at got 100% wrecked by the tsunami, so I guess we got lucky.
My aunt and uncle were on the beach that morning just before the tsunami hit. They had scheduled a boat tour, but when they got there, the boat was broken and the owner had to cancel. They were standing on the beach trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their morning when they saw the tide pulling way out. My aunt and uncle happened to be seasoned sailors, so they knew that was a precursor to a tsunami. They ran up and down the beach telling people to get out now, but most people just ignored them. They called their grown kids who were on vacation with them and told them to get as far inland as possible. Then they got in their rental car and just booked it uphill. So yeah, they dodged that tactical nuke, too.
My family and I were about to leave a store and then my mom had to pee, so we all waited for her. On the highway right in front of us, there was a nasty fatal crash that left multiple people dead.
I was briefly engaged to a man who has since cheated on his gorgeous, intelligent, sweet wife hundreds of times. They are separated but have 2 children and will likely reconcile. I broke our engagement when he said that he thought it was perfectly okay for a man to cheat on his wife if they'd been married for a while and he'd gotten bored. Oddly enough, he didn't believe a woman was entitled to do the same. I feel so badly for his poor wife now. He began cheating on her 2 years into their marriage when she was pregnant with their first child.
I've known a couple of people like this. And they usually have amazing spouses. Silver lining for me is one of them was my wife's first husband. His loss was my gain. Had the best woman on the planet and F'd it up. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost.
Back in the 80s, a friend asked me to go on a motorcycle trip to Alaska with him. I declined. He had an accident on the way, skidded several hundred yards on his head, and now has a metal plate. I would have been on that bike with him.
As someone who lives in Alaska, and has taken a handful of motorcycle trips, in my opinion there isn't a more beautiful or dangerous way to experience the views that the state has to offer. Even driving through town there are huge patches of the road constantly covered in gravel or potholes. I will never own or probably ride another motorcycle as long as I live here. I've just seen way too many accidents, and my dad has told several stories about the people he's seen lose their lives on the road. Beautiful, fun, but so dangerous.
When I was 16, I had a good friend whose father was a wealthy businessman of some kind. This is Chicago and I guess his dad started screwing around with the wrong guy's woman. My friend told me it had something to do with the mob or a mobster's wife. I never knew for sure, but do know that I saw firsthand his dad get threatened, at a tennis court of all places, by 2 well-dressed clearly Italian men who drove up in a black Cadillac. I was sitting right there with his friend as they talked to him and it was exactly as I imagined it would be in the movies. My friend said there was a contract on his dad. He actually said it like it was cool, and at the time, I guess I thought it was too. I was invited to go with them on a fishing trip in Lake Michigan that week, my friend, his dad's friend, and I. 2 days before the fishing trip, something happened with a member of my family and we had to go to Cincinnati for a few days. When I returned, I learned my friend's body was found floating in Lake Michigan. He was wearing a life vest. His father, his father's friend, and the boat were never found. Police questioned me about what I knew and who I'd seen talking to his dad, but I think I was lucky that I said I couldn't describe what they looked like and didn't get wildly specific. Either way, the coolest kid I knew, Chris, was dead. And they never found his dad, the dad's friend or the boat. It was a nice boat on a calm day on Lake Michigan. And something bad happened. Always felt I dodged getting caught up in something I wouldn't have escaped from.
Many a year ago, in Thunder Bay, Ontario, I had a friend that had a nice little business. He'd get a Tupperware container of WD oil shipped in every couple of weeks. He had a house, a cottage, a boat, a muscle car, a motorcycle. He jumped into cocaine, and very quickly went from the nose to the pipe to the arm. I was hanging with him one evening on his front porch when a big, black Cadillac pulled up and a short guy in a suit got out, and 2 human mountains walked to the porch behind him. All he said was, "Pay your debt. I don't want to come back here." Then they got into the car and drove away. That's when I noticed that the car had Michigan plates. These guys drove 12 effing hours just for that. 2 weeks later he disappeared without a trace. I'd like to think he ran, but there's a big effing lake there, and he probably went swimming with a brick.
I met a girl one summer and she fell head over heels for me. She even ditched her fiancé for me, but when she went back home at the end of summer they got back together, and got married. I saw her again the following summer, and she wanted to pick up where we left off, but I said no. I ran into her years later. She told me all about her sex life, and how her husband could no longer satisfy her, so she was hooking up with random strangers from the internet while he slept in the spare room. They had 2 kids by time. I felt sorry for them.
Damn, does the husband know?
Yes, he knew. They seemed to be living under the same roof for the sake of the kids, but the marriage was all but over.
I was dating this coworker who lied all the time. I told her from the beginning that I didn't want to start anything if she wasn't serious and if there was someone else. She assured me no, and she had deep feelings for me. One day out of the blue, a random girl stopped by our workplace and asked around for the girl I was dating. In a building filled with hundreds of people, I happened to be the only one at the front, and asked what's going on. Turns out, this random person was pretty much there to start a fight. The girl I was dating was sending nudes to her boyfriend. Whoops. If I had not been at the front, I would have never found out. One angry text later, I never heard from her again.
Not me, but a family friend managed to avoid the Pulse shooting where they were having their birthday party because they had gotten an intense craving for McNuggets, so he and his group went to McDonald's down the road. They left roughly 15 to 20 minutes before everything went down.
I had just moved to Colorado by myself, and for whatever reason my mom was encouraging me to get out of the act and go see the new Batman movie. That was the night of the theater shooting, and not only was that the theater but it was also the showing I was considering going to. I stayed up late playing League of Legends instead and woke up to a lot of texts and missed calls. Probably not ideal for my family's blood pressure that I slept in pretty late that day too.
I'm sorry to hear that you played League of Legends.
Me too. The real disaster is I still enjoy it.
In uni, me and my 2 best friends were drinking, playing Mario Kart and just shooting the sh*t. We were hungry and wanted food. I said let's just make a tombstone pizza because we've been drinking and most delivery services were closed at 1:30 a.m. One said he's fine to drive. I said no, bad idea. He got the other guy to go with. McDonald's usually doesn't take 2 hours to get, so eventually I went for a scooter ride since McDonald's was less than 2 miles away. I noticed there's a taped off spot on the bridge right before McDonald's with a crane, cops and an ambulance. They curbed the car and drove it off the bridge and into the shallow creek top first and died on impact. I dodged the nuke of death but ate the bullet of survivor's guilt for nearly 5 years. Edit. Woe was not expecting all the upvotes, awards and positive feedback. Thank you everyone who read this and felt something, because life is tough and you never know when it's the time. Have a nice day and thank you all. Edit. Based off the comments I guess I have a few things to add. 1. I am doing good. Depression and fear of driving lasted a pretty long time. Moving back home for 2 semesters helped a lot versus being alone in the college apartment we shared. 2. It's those old Razor scooters that you kick, not a moped or electric scooter. 3. I took the keys of the driver but he had a spare key and they left when I went to the bathroom. Got to the living room and they were gone, looked out the window and his car was gone. Verbally said foo *k what an idiot, his dad is going to be livid if he gets pulled over.
I'm okay to drive is the most dangerous sentence ever spoken.
My manager was trying to have me fired for underperformance, and I was so depressed at the time that I believed I was an awful employee. The place I work has a whole song and dance routine just to get someone a verbal warning, let alone fired, so she tried to get me to take a severance payment so that I'd leave and save her the trouble. I had to take sick leave shortly after that conversation, and while I was gone, she initiated the formal process to have me fired. I was able to drag things out for a couple of months, and during that time, I discovered she'd falsified documents to make me look like a lost cause. Presenting a dossier to HR demonstrating her statements were provably misleading, and documenting every time she failed to follow proper procedures turned everything around. I got moved to a better job on a better team, and spent a solid year rubbing it in her face how well I was doing, and ensuring it got back to her whenever I got praise from the department head. It was pretty annoying that she didn't get fired, but there would have been too much blowback on management if she had. Still, I went from the verge of unemployment to unequivocal success.
My ex ran over a mother of 2 with his car and fled the scene.
Dated a woman who was physically and emotionally abusive. Got caught in the cycle of abuse, gaslighting, etc. Not sure how I was going to leave, afraid to leave, etc. One day a neighbor witnessed one of her violent outbursts and called the police. She was arrested, charged with domestic violence, assault. I was granted a restraining order. Luckily my dilemma took care of itself. If it hadn't, who knows? A buddy of mine told me if I had stayed with her much longer I'd be dead. He wasn't kidding.
When I was 11 I started losing vision in my left eye, and eventually went completely blind in about 2 to 3 weeks. After lots of testing we found that I had a brain tumor in my left optic nerve that would likely spread quickly. They gave me a year and a half to live in the best case scenario with treatment. They got the eye surgically removed, started me on radiation and chemo, and luckily I responded well to it. Cancer's long gone, am now a cyclops, and happy to be disease-free.
Congrats on beating cancer as a kid. Do you rock an eye patch? My neighbor is a vet that lost his eye and wears one. Always thought they were cool.
I'd love to wear one more often, but I need to find one that's comfortable. They always feel itchy to me, but I should invest in a custom one someday.
During university, ex wanted me to get her a work visa. She proposed and even faked being pregnant. The mental stress caused me to flunk my exams, and I had to take a year break back home to save up and come back. Eventually found out that she was cheating on me.
I hope you're doing better now.
I couldn't be happier with my current partner. Thank you.
Back in college, ex cheated and got preggo. Blamed it on me, involved her family and all. I was willing to file a case in court with medical legal as needed. Ex got too pressured as I was talging to her dad about medical tests etc. Out of nowhere she admitted that I wasn't the father and it was some classmate she had a fling with.
Similar, I broke up with my crazy ex in fall 15. Well, in fall 16 I moved to the city and was home alone, bored and horny, and texted her. Well, she came over a few hours later and we had some great sex, but I was drunk and unable to finish, as well as had a condom on. That was a Friday night. The following Monday morning when I was at work she texts me 3 positive pregnancy tests and what looked like an ultrasound she took a pic of off Google. I called her out on her poo. I knew how pregnancy worked as my sister just had a kid and told her there was 0 chance it was mine if we hooked up on Friday. She blew up on me, sent me a novel of a text, and then would call my phone non-stop till I blocked her on everything. Good reason to never call up your crazy ex when you're drunk and horny.
In school, was about 16, at a house party. Friend's older brother and a bunch of guys' friends show up, bust out some coke. I knocked out. Just bad feelings, so called my mom and left. Party was busted. Some got jail time. Missed it by 15 minutes.
Nuke dodge number 1. Ex had some type of breakdown. I woke up with her standing over me with a butcher knife. She in some sort of catatonic state. I didn't move. I don't think she saw that I was awake. Then she left the room after a while, came back into our bedroom sans butcher knife, got in bed, snuggled me until it was time to get up. Then she made me some great waffles for breakfast, as cheerful as ever. Didn't get stabbed, but still have trouble sleeping unless I'm alone in the room. Nuke dodge number 2. Another ex cheated on me. She had wanted a baby. We both did, TBH. So she ended up getting married to the dude she cheated on me with. They had a baby, then she cheated on him and they got divorced. So wife's boyfriend is paying the child support. Life is effing good.
What happened with the first ex?
It got worse. For instance, I caught her gaslighting me, which I had suspected she was doing. Things like hiding my car keys, then questioning my sanity when I'd say, I'm sure I left them there. Then when I confronted her after catching her, she point blank said, I'm trying to get you to kill yourself. She had also started behaviors like calling me the enemy. Which, to be really honest, I laugh about that the enemy thing now because it's a ridiculous experience. I legit remember thinking, wow. She really hates cuddling now. One time she said that because I'd set up a blanket fort, had her favorite show ready to watch on the laptop, and was going cuddle her, which was something we'd enjoyed together quite a few times before things devolved. And that's tip of the iceberg. F-ed with my head for a bit. Long story short, I ended up living in my car for 6 months to facilitate getting away because I was worried she'd kill me. Then I did some therapy to come to terms with being a male victim of domestic abuse. Then I did a lot of big shroom trips which actually helped me process poo, which I didn't find with talk therapy. Just wish her the best and maintain zero contact.
I was asked to have a marriage of convenience to help someone get a green card. I saw a few friends involved in that community all have horrible issues and tons of stress. I don't need that poo.
Guy on Grindr I was chatting with looked cute and we were chatting. He was too far though and I was a student who didn't have a car, could not host in dorms. He was later arrested for purposely spreading HIV through Grindr hookups. This was in Edinburgh. Edit, for the record, this was before PrEP was available in Scotland and I don't think it's even relevant. I never even stated my safe sex practices. I actually was on PrEP though, but that doesn't change the fact that I dodged a bullet by not having sex with someone malicious enough to purposely spread HIV. Some of you are quick to jump on the victim-blaming bandwagon. The guy made national news and apparently also blackmailed men he slept him. Link. My dodge bullet is less about HIV and more so that I did not encounter and have sex with someone with very malicious intent. There's a lot of you in the comments making assumptions about my sexual practices when I never even mentioned them.
What a complete and total DK.
I married my high school sweetheart when I was 23 and she was 21. We had been together for roughly 5 years at that time and were madly in love. We were married in April and she announced in mid to late May that she was pregnant. She had taken a test with her friend after feeling sick. I was so happy and excited that I didn't take the time to ask to see the test, she had just thrown it away. Fast forward a bit and she wouldn't let me attend doctor's visits and I gave her the benefit of the doubt for privacy and the such. But then she wasn't getting bigger at even the 6-month mark. I was suspicious and confronted her about it and she went off on me with the standard barrage of, "How could you, and don't you trust me?" And she pointed out some weight gain. I was skeptical but loving and supportive of my wife. She had a rough life growing up and I felt as if I needed to be more patient and understanding. I reminded her that I will help her find help if she's not really pregnant, that I would love and support her and we would work through it. She said it wasn't necessary. Wifey started gaining weight more, especially in the belly, so I kept going moving forward as if she was pregnant. We had a name picked out, a full wardrobe of the first 3 clothing sizes, a fully decked out bedroom, etc. My family was suspicious but still supportive. Around month 8 it was painfully obvious she was not pregnant. I had already found her ultrasounds on Google, the weight gain stopped, she had a pancreas issue that she couldn't even eat enough to gain much weight, she had to be making herself sick to gain, and our relationship was deteriorating fast. I was remarkably patient. The due date came and went and I asked what the doctor was saying. "Oh, it's okay, the baby can sometimes be up to 2 weeks past due." And I had my date. I gave it 2 weeks and then laid down the cold hard truth, "Go to the hospital with me to see what's up with the baby, pregnancy or I'm gone right now." She went. I was not allowed to go back with her, she requested the doctors do not share with me. Wifey had told the doctors that she was there for an issue related to her pancreas issues. Never mentioned the possible pregnancy. I was permitted to visit her in her room and I looked her in the eye and told her it was over. I took the bullet, or rather shotgun blast from that issue. But I avoided being gaslit and manipulated for the rest of my life. Edit, this blew up so I'm going to continue the story to the aftermath as I wrote in a couple of comments. Sorry for any formatting, continuity issues but I didn't want to edit the comments, She disappeared, took another man's name, and ran from the process server so I could not divorce her. We're still legally married even though she lives as someone else's husband. I went through years of massive depression after this and I'm only just now in a financial and mental position to be able to finally solidify the divorce. That will be happening within the next year. She also went around telling people that I lied, I'm a horrible person for abandoning her, and that I was abusive and it caused her to lose the baby. The day after I left she came back to our house to gather things, attacked me, and then called the cops to say that I threw her to the ground. Luckily I knew enough not to be alone and had several witnesses to the situation. That did not stop her from filing an emergency protective order to have me thrown out of our home after I had left her. She then emptied the house, all of which was paid for by me or brought to the relationship by me because she had nothing due to her situation growing up. I lost every heirloom, keepsake, and picture that I had saved from my childhood until I was approximately 24. I lost it all. And to this day all I have to show for it is a reputation as an abuser and a severe distrust of relationships. I'm not okay. I still deal with the fallout from this on a daily basis sometimes. Check my other lengthy comment about the fallout and come back to this. I tried to leave the woman I dated after her. It took me 5 years to date again, and the rebound ended up getting pregnant early on. I tried to do the right thing and stick with her so my child would have 2 parents. She, too, ended up having mental health issues. Diagnosed while we were together. Hers showed in the form of child neglect and abuse. I ended up with full custody of my son. She hasn't seen him in 2 years. The fed up part is that when I built my case and finally left the GF, she reached out to ex-wife to try to plot against me. They came up with a plan for my current GF to do the same thing that the wife did to me. She filed a false protective order, drained my house of all of my stuff, since GF didn't work, and took my son and fled the state. GF said that I was regularly beating and raping her and my son. Luckily I had learned and had been keeping extensive records of everything to protect myself in the event that history repeated itself. I had records, messages, pictures, and witnesses the second time around. I've found it impossible to date since. I now have a reputation as an abuser and molester. Even though no charges were ever filed, the protective orders were thrown out of court with prejudice, and I won custody of my son from the second relationship due to all of this. I won. But at what cost?
God. That's awful. Why would she do that?
Poor mental health, a terrible childhood, and an overwhelming desire to have her own child. One detail I left out was we would babysit others' kids and she would try to pass them off as her own. I didn't find out that bit until after we were split.
Unintentionally made someone else dodge a literal bullet. I performed in a drag party, a street away from a local LGBTQ center. The show went great and I felt like I was on fire. So I decided to get brave and flirt with this girl I liked. We seemed to click, but I was too nervous to ask for her number just yet. She was planning to go to the LGBTQ center after the party to say hi, and I kept finding excuses to keep her there just a bit longer, until it feels right to ask. The party wrapped up, and I kept chatting with her. Her friends already left and headed there. And I kept trying to find the right timing to ask for her number. We kept chatting for 30-40 minutes, before I finally got the courage. She giggled and gave me her number. I was so happy I couldn't contain myself. Then the phone calls began. Frantic friends calling, and sounding extremely relieved as soon as I picked up. She was getting those calls, too. Everyone who was still in the club got them. As it turned out, a shooter walked into the LGBTQ center nearby, shot at all directions, and fled. 2 people were killed on the spot. Many others were injured. She dodged it, because I was too nervous to ask for her number.
Some 10 years ago I got introduced to what I thought was a WD dealer by friends. FR tried to sell me heroin and was really pushy about it. I ended up buying nothing and thought about snitching him. For some dumb reason I didn't, but someone else did.
When I was a kid, about 6, I somehow threw a piece of metal in the sky and watched it fall in my face. It opened a large and bloody cut right under my right eye. When my mom saw me rubbing my closed eye with a sea of blood, she almost had an attack. But no, I was fine. Got some stitches and it was hella scary, but all good, didn't even leave a scar. If my dumb ass was hit just a bit higher, I would have lose an eye.
I almost put spoiled cream in my coffee this morning. It was touch and go for a while.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.